Hey, Husker fans, welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me as always is my co-host, Annie Gillette, and we're back for another episode to cover a lot of things that have been happening with the Nebraska football program. They finally addressed the offensive line in the transfer portal, but we have some more makeovers coming in the wide receiver room and the secondary. We're going to talk a little basketball too. Before we do that, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, get into the comments section. Danny, how are you doing on this Thursday morning, man?
I'm doing good. It's cold here. It's really cold here, and I just can't wait for spring. But we still got a little bit to go. And but yeah, I'm doing good because while it's cold outside, the Husker news and rumors are heating up.
Yeah, it seems like, we always say this, but there's never a dull moment, in the Nebraska
Yeah.
athletic world. And there hasn't been. Nebraska has been, really cranked up with the transfer portal. And, Dana Holgerson talked about it. Matt Rule talked about it. But they've even been maybe more active than I thought they were going to be. And it just hasn't stopped. And finally, on Wednesday, Nebraska finally is able to address the offensive line with 6'7" Elijah Pritchett from Alabama. Started 10 games at right tackle last season, started a game at left tackle, played in all of their games, a former 5-star recruit. And you look at his rankings in the transfer portal, 24/7 Sports has him as the number 42 overall prospect, the number 4 offensive tackle. So, Danny, I know there are some fans that are still up in the air about this addition, but what are your thoughts on Elijah Pritchett and Nebraska finally addressing the offensive line?
I like this move because, the big question that everybody has and the big stat that everybody keeps pointing to is 31 pressures and 6 sacks allowed in 2024. But it gives us depth at a position where we lost a guy like Bryce Benhart. And people have been also trashing Bryce Benhart in the middle of trashing Elijah Pritchett. But I thought Benhart played well over the last couple seasons. Maybe not like All-American level, but I thought he greatly improved. So I put that as a notch in the belt to Donovan Raiola. But as far as Pritchett is concerned, I mean, he has great size, right? 6'6", 330 pounds. Maybe pass blocking is something that the coaching staff can work with him on. He can definitely improve in that area. But I really like this get. I mean, I'll just say this right now. I feel like the worst tackle at Alabama would be a day one starter at Nebraska. So, I mean, I like it. I really do. I'm not going to say, he's going to be an All-American and he's the best one and blah, blah, blah. But I think this is a better pickup than some are giving the Huskers credit for.
Yeah, I mean, you look at offensive linemen, offensive tackle, especially, they're hard to get in the transfer portal. So to get, one of the top 5 players at the position, I mean, I think that that's doing pretty solid work for Nebraska. And, like you mentioned, you lose, Bryce Benhart, who did play well the last 2 years. You compared that to how he looked in 2022, where, there were times where he had a tough time getting out of his stance. I mean, that was Bryce Benhart.
Yeah.
And these past 2 years, he was so much better once they took like those braces off and he actually seemed like he could move.
He got his confidence back. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't shock me if he got. I'm not saying he's going to get drafted, but I almost guarantee he'll be in a camp next year because there's just not very many offensive tackles around, even in the NFL. So, like, I feel like he'll at least get signed as a rookie. But I like Pritchett because he started games. He's been out there against Alabama. Played in that ReliaQuest Bowl game against Michigan, and his pass blocking was great out as a 65. And to be honest, I don't put that much stock in the PFF grades. I mean, I think that they do a pretty good job, but PFF, they don't know exactly like what the scheme is for they don't know offensive line responsibility. So I feel like that there's, I don't think that's the end all be all in terms of grading for players. So I'll just say that. But a guy who can be a plug and play starter. That's Nebraska desperately needed that at tackle. They needed one because right now Gunnar Gatula is the only guy on the roster. I mean, I shouldn't say the only guy, but the only guy who's healthy who started games at tackle. Teddy Prochazka's out there, Turner Corcoran, but we have no idea if they're even going to be on the roster next year at this point with their health status. So I think this was an essential move, and frankly, I hope they're not done. I am still wondering if because they had that Shayaz Pete, I think that's how he pronounces his name, the offensive tackle from New Mexico, 6'8", 320 pounds, was all conference in 2023. Some of these guys, it's interesting where they're ranked. He actually wasn't ranked before as a transfer. Now they do have him ranked 109th overall. He's the number 11 offensive tackle. And like I said, he's played over 1,700 snaps at left tackle, missed part of last season, but was all conference in 2023. He was supposed to visit on Wednesday. I'm not sure if he did. I don't know if you've seen that, but I would love to get both. I mean, put him at left tackle, put Pritchett at right tackle, see what, let Gatula compete as well. But it would be nice to have 3 legitimate starting tackles for Nebraska, which is something they don't have right now.
I did see that he was going to visit, but I'm not sure if he actually did as well. But and again, I'm going to go back to this because I think it's important. We're seeing this coaching staff and Matt Rule continue to embrace the transfer portal, and I know it's kind of is not his style, and he loves to develop players. But we're seeing the program be really aggressive, and that was a concern that I had coming in. Would they be aggressive in the transfer portal? And the answer is yes, and they are doing a good job at filling several needs. And one more offensive lineman would be great, and I really have no complaints about this transfer portal class at all. I really don't. They hit the ground running, and they sealed the deal with a lot of guys, early in the process.
Yeah, they've done an exceptional job. I think they've addressed all the major positions of need that, we really wanted them to address. They had another pass rusher, Maurice Westmoreland, in. He ended up committing to Tulane. So, to me, that always felt like maybe a James Williams, replacement, just like a pure pass rusher. But that
was a
didn't
bummer because I really liked him. Like I he's an NFL type guy. He's going to play on Sundays, but
yeah, it would have been nice to have that rotation guy to come in and be that pass rush kind of specialist. Maybe they didn't like what he did on early downs. He was ranked like 700th in the portal. Some of these rankings are kind of weird. I feel like in some ways these rankings are prioritizing potential still over production. Marquise Watson Trent, who was the Sun Belt Defensive Player of the Year, is ranked in the 600s, which is kind of crazy to me. But
if he was an SEC player, he wouldn't be that low.
Yeah, and so at any rate, it will be interesting to see what happens, with Pete if he did take that visit. I haven't seen anything, so maybe he didn't, and maybe that was just kind of like a backup plan if Pritchett didn't go through. But it would be nice because maybe Gatula could even bump inside and play guard in that situation, or you at least the idea that you're going to make it through a season with your top 2 starting tackles, like that's probably wishful thinking. I mean, at some point you're probably going to need a third tackle to start a game for you, and I would much rather have that be Gunnar Gatula than, like, who else would that be? Grant Bricks maybe? Like, I don't know. They really, so they still are a little thin at that tackle room. But they also have, that's the other thing too, is there is time in the spring, and I feel like the spring is when we're going to get some type of idea on what's up with Teddy Prochazka and Turner Corcoran, because for one, I don't know how injuries factor into this roster limit. Like if Teddy is on the team, say just like as an example, and he tries to play spring ball in March, okay, and whatever can't do it, and then he medically retire, and then that frees up a spot for Nebraska. Like I really don't know how injuries factor into this roster limit. So it's going to be
I think you made a good point there. Yeah, no, I think you made a good point because, I bet you they're trying to figure out if he can go, and then if he can, and if he seems healthy, then maybe they don't need another guy. But if he can, or if he's struggling a little bit, then maybe they'll go out and get another guy. Because I think there's going to be a lot more names entering the portal during that spring window. Because they'll a lot of them will see the writing on the wall and things like that. So maybe they're waiting.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is at least I haven't seen a date that these teams have to be at this 105-man roster limit. So I think there's a lot of gray areas. I think teams are just trying to get as close to that number as possible. But I don't know how that process works. Like if if there's a certain date, or, if there's any flexibility with that number based on injuries, there's Matt Rule has mentioned that before. And I think there's a lot of things that at least publicly we don't know. Maybe the teams know it. But I do think spring ball maybe will be a situation where they have way over that limit, and then they can start kind of dwindling that down based on what you said, depth chart and other things like that.
Well, I think you're going to see, programs being run like NFL rosters. They're going to have practice. You're going to see cuts. You're going to see cuts, like I said, during summer camp, and you're going to see cuts during spring ball. I think the days of, just keeping guys, on the roster and kind of, shelving them are long over. I think it's going to be kind of like a NFL type operation. And I think honestly, just from a Nebraska perspective, that's why it was so important to get so many new coaches with NFL experience, because I think we're starting to see the college game be run like a minor league for the NFL, even more so than it already was.
Yeah, for sure. And it'll be interesting roster management. It's going to be a lot like it is in the NFL, paying players at premium positions. I just think that's going to be something that we're going to see, and that's, Nebraska had a big kind of paycheck here waiting for a tackle, and whether it went to Pritchett or, they had Isaiah World, they had that money set aside for an offensive tackle because they know that's what it's going to take to get one, and pass rush goes the same way. I'm sure Williams Nwaneri, they had money set aside for that position, and that's just the way that you need to build your roster. And it starts with quarterback, it starts with protecting the quarterback, and it starts with affecting the quarterback, which is what Matt Rule said in his first press conference. And you can see that that's still the priority for Nebraska, addressing those offensive and defensive lines. But they have also been very busy in some other positions in the transfer portal too, and I want to get to that. Wide receiver, they've already made three additions,
I want to
with
say three.
Isaiah Hunter, Dane Key, and then the
Hardly,
kid from
Hardly Gilmore.
Hardly Gilmore. So three wide receivers. There's potentially a fourth coming. Jonah Wilson, who was recruited out of high school by Dana Holgorsen, spent his first 2 seasons with Houston. One of those was a red shirt. He's in the portal. 6'2", 200 pounds. Was ranked as or graded, as a 91 coming out as from high school. 293 overall. Not ranked yet in the portal. Probably not going to be ranked as a 4-star. Just doesn't have a ton of production. But this is a kid who, as a senior in high school, 1,300 yards, 13 touchdowns, 17 yards per catch, 36 yards on 5 kick return opportunities with a 98-yard touchdown. And this is in Texas 6A football. So, he was playing big-time football. I feel like this is going to be a done deal with Holgorsen. He's already been projected to Nebraska by, Sean Callahan. So,
I think Pete Dacos, too, if I'm not mistaken. No, I think it might be Sean Callahan and Brian Munson for now. But
okay. But still, usually... Like we've said with transfer predictions, they're more, when you see transfer prediction, it's 99% of the time it comes true, it seems like. So my thought is man, Dana Holgorsen really did not like this Nebraska football wide receiver room. So what is your takeaway from another addition and the wide receiver makeover?
When Dana Holgorsen said a couple of weeks ago that they were going to bring in about 20 to 30, transfer guys for visits, I thought, oh, that's a high number. They would never reach that number. He's just saying that to, do whatever, but he wasn't joking. He wasn't joking at all. And, when I look at the wide receiver transfers and when I look at the guys that they want to bring in, they all have size. They're tall. They're all kind of physical, and they all have speed. And I think when you look at what Dekai Schwartz and Holgorsen want, they want big-bodied wide receivers that are athletic, can catch the football at the point of attack and can, offer size in the red zone. They're looking for a very specific body type for the wide receivers. And they're looking for guys that, they're comfortable, obviously, coaching. And, I think for this type of offense that they want to run, I think it's honestly a solid move because, when you look at what the skill set that Dylan Raiola has and his ability to want to throw the ball deep and want to throw the ball downfield. I mean, I hate to say it, but you couldn't really do that a ton with Jalen Lloyd in coverage. You could do it when he was wide open, but he didn't have the size to kind of go after those jump balls in coverage. And now you have a bunch of big-bodied downfield threats that can, provide that value to the offense. So they know what body type they want in the wide receivers. They know, guys that they want to go after. And it's becoming very clear that they have a vision in the wide receiver room. And it's not necessarily the small speedsters, but the tall, big playmakers.
And, Nebraska, they've added some pieces, but they lost a ton from this wide receiver room. Not only, Isaiah Nair and Jamal Banks, but Malachi Coleman, Jalen Lloyd, Isaiah McMorris, Davon Hall. So they lost 4 guys who basically were, either in their freshman or sophomore year or had 3 to 4 years of eligibility left. So it makes sense to go out and get a Hardly Gilmore who's got, 3 years of eligibility, a Jonah Wilson who's got 3 years of eligibility, and then You've got Cortez Mills coming in here, who is standing out in the Under
Yeah.
Armour All-American game. And man, it's going to be really this wide receiver group, because you got Cortez Mills, Ja'Cory Barney obviously coming back, and he's going to have a big role next year. Dane Key, Hunter, Hardly Gilmore, and now Wilson, plus Quinn Clark, who still I think has a chance to make a name for himself here at Nebraska. And so there's a lot of talented guys, and going to be a lot of mouths to feed. But I think that's a good problem to have, and I think Carter Nelson's going to probably move to tight end. It just seems like that's going to, at this point, it just seems like that's the writing on the wall. And so, yeah, I mean, you think about, Harburg and, Carter Nelson at tight end, all those weapons at wide receiver. I know running back maybe seems a little bit thin, but I think sometimes too, if you really trust your evaluations and you trust your young guys, like at some point you have to let them go perform. And Nebraska might be at that point with their running backs, like Quentin Ives, Nelson, Jamarian Parker coming in, like they might just see enough of those guys to say like, hey, we're just going to roll with them. I'm not sure,
pretty
but
solid, to be honest.
they haven't. I mean, they haven't shown like any interest in a running back up to this point. So I just don't think that that's happening.
I mean, it kind of makes sense because Jamarian Barker's not a guy that you necessarily sit on the bench in his first year. Connor Booth could also fit into that category. Quentin Ives played well in the Pinstripe Bowl, so maybe they do have enough, and I'm okay with that if that's the way they want to roll. Would I like to see another running back? Sure, but do I think that the position is completely barren, like some suggest? No.
It's like I guess like it's a little worrisome of the idea if Emmett Johnson gets hurt, but at some point you got to play with who you got. And I mean, Ives has been here for 2 years, and Nelson's been here for a year. So we'll see. Running back is one position where young guys generally can contribute, faster than others. So, and I've talked about how much I like Jamarian Parker. So I wouldn't surprise me if he made an impact next year.
And I think with the amount of wide receivers that we have in the room, I don't know if we're going to be running the football a ton. We're still going to be running the football. Don't get me wrong, but there's not that pressure to get, so many running backs in the room because running is going to be the focal point of the offense. It's going to be passing the football. It's going to be important to make sure that there's depth there and production there. But, I think we're going to be passing the football a lot, so that will help in terms of health and things like that.
And then, and also just the way that they, Holgerson knows how to challenge the defense. I think that's also going to, open up the run game, because he's going to make teams defend the entire field. That's the whole part of the spread offense, and he, is a master at it. So 15 transfer portal commitments so far, but looking like a couple of more. We talked about the wide receiver. Another could be coming in the secondary. Let's see, it's Marcus. I'm trying to think of how do you spell his name. Marcus Groves Killebrew is the other guy that we're kind of looking at for Nebraska. He's been projected to the Huskers. Played at Arizona last year. He also played at Texas A&M and one other school. He kind of moved around a little bit his first couple of years, but had 24 tackles last year. I think 6 passes broken up. So played pretty well for Arizona. You look at Nebraska's already added Andrew Marshall, Justin Rhett. Let's see, who else did they add in the secondary? I think there was
Khan.
one. Yeah, Jameer Khan. So they've already added 2 corners and a safety, looking like they could be adding a 3rd corner. So what does that tell you about, John Butler's kind of a viewpoint of the secondary?
He wants his guys, and he wants, guys that are very good at defending the pass and taller guys. Like I love Malcolm Hartzog, but he just couldn't get it done in the secondary spot last year. So, they identified secondary as a need. Tommy Hill is gone too. He went to the draft. So, they saw a need and they went and they attacked it. And I think getting another corner is huge for the depth of the secondary room, because we saw it last year. Once Bly Hill went down and Tommy Hill, unfortunately struggled with the plantar fasciitis, that there wasn't a ton of depth at the corner position. And I get that's probably why Malcolm had to stay out there just for depth's sake. So they're making sure that depth is not a problem moving forward, and they're getting, taller guys at the position.
And Groves Killebrew, 6 foot, 185 pounds, so 4 passes defense last year. Sorry, I was a little off on that. He played a couple of games for Texas A&M in 2022 as well, but he's still got 2 years to play, essentially. And just like another experienced guy from a Power 4 conference. He's ranked as a 3-star in the 500s in the 24 in the transfer portal rankings from 24/7 Sports. But you add him and Marshall and Kahn, that really helps solidify that cornerback room. You've also got Donovan Jones and Bly Hill. Some of those guys. Jeremiah Charles is another name. Probably gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. Yes, you're right. Obviously the starter, but yeah, I think clearly they wanted to add some depth and some size, and so you've really, in my opinion, I mean, you've really solidified that position with adding 3 guys who have starting experience. And I mean, I get that 2 of them are coming from the FCS level, but like I said, those guys can play. Andrew Marshall, like I'm not worried about that. And to get another dude from a Power 4 school, like I really feel good about where the secondary is.
I do too. I think they did a good job, like I said, of identifying needs, and they went out and got them. And they're stacking depth at multiple positions: linebacker, corner, wide receiver. Like they're adding depth and they're adding playmakers. So you have to feel good about their efforts in the transfer portal so far in the cycle.
And what it tells me also is that, when John Butler's the DC, I think you're going to see more defensive backs on the field. Like I think you're going to see more than 5. So that's, which you probably should. I've talked about that for years. It seems like even going back to the old DC, under the Frost era, they always wanted to play, nickel or whatever. Like it seemed like Nebraska didn't want to play 3-4 cornerbacks, and I think that's going to change under John Butler. And when you play a team like Oregon or Ohio State, like you need 4 corners. You need 4 good corners, or you're going to be screwed, because they will spread you out, and they've got four wide receivers ranked in the top 100. And if you have one weakness, they will shred you. And so I think that they're trying to prepare for that eventuality. And like if you're going to be a playoff contending team, like you need to be able to defend those teams. And so that, to me, that's what this move reflects, is the idea that like if we play a true spread team that's got 4 or 5 wide receivers, we need to be able to match up man for man, and now we can do that.
Yeah, and it gives us the flexibility also to kind of mix and match and see who works in certain situations and who doesn't, instead of just trotting out the same couple guys in the secondary. I mean, you could see at points last season where the secondary was gassed, and now they don't have to worry about not having enough depth at the position.
All right, so now enough talk about football. Let's switch gears to basketball to wrap up the show. Looking back on Tuesday, before we talk about the Iowa game, the Nebraska women's basketball team did get a big victory on Wednesday night, knocking off number 20 Michigan State. Alexis Markowski had 28 points, 8 rebounds. That was her best game of the season. So big win for Amy Williams' team as they try to improve their NCAA tournament resume. But man,
tough stretch too for the women's team.
Yeah. And the Big Ten is tough, man. That might be the best. I think the Big Ten's the best conference in women's basketball. It's unbelievable. Like you got USC, UCLA, Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana, Maryland, Nebraska, and Michigan State. I mean, there's a ton of really good Big Ten women's basketball teams, and that's true about the men too. And they would have had a chance for a big time victory. It would have been a quad 1 win. Blew a 15-point lead against Iowa, which does tend to happen at Carver Hawkeye Arena. It's not like Nebraska's the first team to blow a lead in that place. The officiating was terrible, but a huge missed opportunity for the Huskers on Tuesday night.
Yeah, definitely, and it was kind of deflating to watch it unfold, and they just couldn't stop the bleeding at points in the game, and they were able to again get that big lead, and then they were just unable to sustain it. So it was definitely a missed opportunity on Tuesday, but I still feel good about where this team is and where they're headed, and only their 3rd loss of the season. So I mean, they've put together a solid body of work over the last couple weeks, and they definitely don't look like a team that lost to Michigan State. So that's encouraging too. And like we said before, it's any given day in the Big Ten, someone's bound to lose or someone's bound to get upset. So that just shows how good the conference is and how kind of balanced it is as well.
Yeah, it's every night is tough, and almost every road game is going to be a quad 1 opportunity this year for Nebraska. So there's going to be plenty of other chances. And yeah, it's like I said, it was frustrating, and it was frustrating to sit there and see Peyton Sandfort make like 1 billion threes in the second half. But that's what Iowa does. And the transition defense fell apart, and the ball screen defense was not good down the stretch. I mean, it seemed like Iowa was either getting an open three or a layup every time, and
Yeah.
I think they just got frazzled in that environment. And like I said, I've seen that happen. I've seen Michigan do that. I'm a Michigan fan as well. I've seen them lose double-digit leads at Carver Hawkeye in like 2 minutes. Like 2 years ago, I think they were up like 11 with literally with like 112 left, and they lost the freaking game. It just Iowa knows how to do that. They're the weirdest team like in college basketball because every single guy can like shoot the three from 30 feet, so it's just a weird thing. And yeah, it's not all on the officiating, but it definitely it was a contributing factor. Like there was, like one time Juwan Gary like drove to the basket and literally like it was a block. Like the guy basically like he didn't forehand him, but he's essentially like with his chest like bumped Gary down. And instead of 2 free throws, Nebraska got the ball out of bounds with 5 seconds left on the clock. So couldn't really do much with it. There was another time where he got a loose ball, did not step on the line right in front of Fred Hoiberg, and they called him for stepping on the line. They missed the clear double dribble in the last 10 seconds. But just there was a number of bad calls, but I mean, it is what it is. They just they need to bounce back, and this game against Purdue now, that to me that's the disappointing thing about this is because if you win that game at Iowa, you're 3-1 in the Big Ten, and it's like you're kind of off to the races. Now if you lose this game to Purdue, now you're 2-3, and you're still fine, but it just seems like to me if they could have won that game against Iowa, then maybe they would have a chance to actually contend for this Big Ten title, for this Big Ten championship, and they're going to probably have to win this game at Purdue to try to keep that hope alive. Which that's too ambitious of me, but I did after they whipped UCLA, I kind of was like, man, maybe this team can contend for the Big Ten title because it is pretty wide open.
As long as they make it to the NCAA tournament, I don't know about the Big Ten title. I mean, maybe that is ambitious, but I feel good about this team's chances in an NCAA tournament type of game. So we'll see what happens. But Purdue is going to be a big game. It's going to be a big game. It's not going to be easy. Purdue is also another tough team. So I'm interested to see how they bounce back coming up.
They finally don't have Zach Edey though, so that's a good thing.
What a nightmare he was. Although we stopped him at home last year and made him look kind of small. So that was nice.
That was awesome. That was a great win. I'm just trying to check the latest bracketology to see where the Huskers are at. So number 8, Nebraska in the latest ESPN bracketology from Joe Lunardi is a number 8 seed. They would have to play Arkansas right now.
I don't love the 8-9 range because it's very evenly matched games. Like Texas A&M, that matchup last year really, really messed us up badly. That was a terrible matchup.
Yeah, if you could get up to like a 6, the 6th line, which I do think is possible. This team's got some good wins, so this Purdue game is going to be a big test, though. So I'm excited to see how that goes. That's on Saturday, I believe. Let me double check here. I've not been great with my times, folks, so I apologize for that. My phone is sometimes the smartphone is too smart for me, and it outsmarts me. So. So 10 o'clock. So it's going to be 11 Central Time on Sunday. BTN, Big Ten Network, no Peacock. So you can check out Nebraska before you get ready for the NFL playoffs, and hopefully they get a top 20 road win.
I'm excited for the college football playoffs today.
Today, yes. Tonight. We kind of dropped the ball we never really picked the playoff games. So before we go today, let's do that. So we got Ohio State and Texas tonight, Notre Dame, Penn State tomorrow. So who you got? Who's your final 2 going to be?
Ohio State and Notre Dame.
I agree with you as much as I hate it. Ohio State and Notre Dame, just not the best final for a Michigan fan, but
I feel like Ohio State wins the national championship because they're on a roll right now. They are on fire.
I think so too. I do think though. I think that Texas and Notre Dame are going to give them a game though, because I feel like they have the defensive line to kind of control. If anybody can do what Michigan was able to do left in this playoff, I think it's Texas and then maybe Notre Dame. And I think Notre Dame maybe has it in them to do what Michigan could do and run the football, play good defense. And my God, people, like, just bracket Jeremiah Smith. Go watch the Michigan-Ohio State game. Try to do what they did. Like, do not leave Jeremiah Smith one-on-one. Like, that is not good. That's not a winning matchup against anybody. Like, I don't care. There's
You think
maybe
Nebraska beats Michigan next year?
I don't know. I think it's going to be a good game. I think
I don't think
I
it's going to
think
be like what we saw 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago.
I think it'll be I think it'll be a really good game. I think it'll be a really good game. I think that there's a strong chance that Bryce Underwood is starting that game. So I think Bryce Underwood and Dylan Raiola, and I don't know. I think Michigan's going to have a better defense, but I do think Nebraska will have a better offense. So it just kind of depends how good the Nebraska defense will be, which I think will be pretty good. I just don't think they have quite as much NFL talent up front as Michigan, but I do think if they can get some production out of like Riley Van Poppel and some of those guys, like I definitely think Nebraska can win that game. I think every game on the schedule is winnable, and that includes playing Penn State on the road. I really think that. I mean, Nebraska's going to be a double-digit underdog probably for that game, but they can beat Penn State. Penn State with James Franklin is beatable Saturday.
Any coach with James Franklin or any team with James Franklin as coach is beatable. And then, final question: do you think my pal JJ McCarthy ever sees a starting snap in a Vikings uniform?
Ooh, I hope not. I hope they trade him. I
would trade him because I don't know what happened to Sam Darnold, but he is on fire. He is on fire.
What I hope happens is that the Vikings win a playoff game and then lose, and then trade JJ McCarthy, sign Sam Darnold to a big contract, and then Sam Darnold sucks and JJ McCarthy's awesome.
Where were they traded to?
I don't know. Hopefully the New York Giants. I kind of like the Giants back when Purcell was the coach. So that wouldn't be. The Giants should have taken him last year, as I told my friend who's a Giants fan, because their quarterback situation. I was like, Daniel Jones is not the answer, and now they're sitting here a year later still needing a quarterback. So
I don't know. Malik Neighbors is pretty damn good. I wish the Patriots somehow were able to take Neighbors, but I like May, so we'll see.
Can they draft Jeremiah Smith? Can we make Jeremiah Smith? I would take him with the number 4 pick that the Patriots have right away.
I think they're going to end up taking like a tackle or something because they need help everywhere. But I mean, the fact that they lost, the fact that they won that game, that was Gerard Mayo's FU to ownership.
That press conference too from Kraft, that was just bad. He's like, I set him up to fail. Like, yeah, you did.
Yeah, you did. And they have an interview with Ben Johnson tomorrow. I'm hoping for Ben Johnson. I really don't. I feel like Mike Vrabel, we need an offensive-minded head coach. We've had a defensive-minded head coach for 25 years, and I feel like we need an offensive-minded head coach. But
just get rid of stop trying to replicate the Patriot way. You're not going to do that. Just get somebody else. Start fresh. So
I get that Mike Vrabel wasn't technically under the Bill Belichick coaching tree, but getting rid of any ties to the Patriots as far as a head coach is concerned, I mean, that's the route I would go, but
I would too. Well, there's your New England Patriots part of this podcast, folks. So hopefully you enjoy that. But as always, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.